Are evil and suffering the same thing? Is evil just another name for suffering? Or does evil not even exist? Is it just a form of ignorance? So one night, I woke up early and I couldn't fall back asleep. So for some reason, I started thinking about evil, and I wanted to know what it actually is. So I broke it down, and what I found was actually quite interesting. So I started with this. So what would be the worst possible world? It's a world with the maximum amount of suffering. And maybe you've heard people say something similar to this. Okay, the maximum amount of senseless suffering. Okay, that is a truly terrible place. But is that evil? Well, to really look at this, it has to be broken down. Just start with one variable and slowly add on other variables. Okay, so you have one person that's suffering in a world. Suffering all the time. There's no other conscious beings, just that one person. Now, is this evil? Well, if I'm just sitting here, just suffering, is this evil? It seems like evil is something that's done, that evil is action. Okay, so something happens to the person in this world. So let's say a tree falls on the person. Is that evil? We'd say no. It's a natural act. It's not evil. Or this person throws a rock at another rock. Is the person being evil to the rock? No. So what we see is that evil requires a conscious agent, the one doing the evil, and a conscious agent that the evil is being done to. And so, okay, now let's continue. We have that world of two people who are suffering. So again, maximum amount. And this person is doing something to the other person, causing suffering. But they're both suffering the maximum amount. Is this person doing evil? Well, let's say she doesn't want to do what she's doing. And she's suffering. So she's not enjoying it. She's suffering. She doesn't want to do it. Well, that doesn't seem to be evil, because we could even imagine she's being made to do it. Well, then the person making her do it would be the evil one, not her. It's a terrible situation. It's bad, but it's not evil. But now, if we make it where she enjoys causing the suffering, well, then there's the evil. Enjoying suffering. Now, let's keep going with the maximum amount. So we have the maximum amount of suffering, the maximum amount of joy. That's evil. Okay, but now you notice something. By introducing evil, we reduced the amount of suffering by half in this situation. Because we have pure suffering and pure joy. Now you could work on that and say, well, have two people suffering and one person doing the evil, or one person doing evil, four people suffering. So you could increase the suffering without decreasing the evil, but evil will always be less suffering than if it's not there. So, does that mean that suffering is worse than evil? It doesn't seem so. That doesn't seem right. Because we can think about if there's some bad accident that happens. It always is worse if there's evil intention behind what happened. You know, we have, in the United States, we have different words for that. If someone is killed by accident, we call it manslaughter. But if someone is killed on purpose, with an intention, it's murder. Okay, so what is it that is making evil evil? What gives evil the power that it has? And what I noticed is that it's time. If we introduce time, we see the full extent of what evil can do. So think about, with let's say there's a natural disaster. In some country, there's a huge earthquake and many people die. What happens afterwards? Well, people from around the world want to give to charities. They want to give to aid. They want to help. So that suffering is met with compassion, people wanting to help. But now, same situation, but now let's say a building, the person who owns the building skipped on construction costs to save money. And that's why the building fell and killed many people. Okay, so now this is met with anger. Okay, now we find out that he's done this many times and he enjoys doing this. He's bragged about it. Okay, now we're getting irate. We want to see this guy hurt. We want to see him brought to justice. We can see that power of what happens after evil is done. It just multiplies out. Now also, we can look at if we have those two people again, the person suffering. If we look at time first into the future, if this person knows that the suffering that's being caused to her is by evil or with evil intent, it makes it so much worse, because then there's the feeling of hopelessness, like the world's just not good anymore. There could be trauma with that. And also, we can talk about the past of this person. Now we talk about, what if this is an innocent person? They don't deserve it. It makes it more evil. Okay, now, how about evil's effect on the person doing the evil? Well, if this is a person who causes suffering, they're going to seek out suffering as pleasure. And they'll seek it out just in their environment that they're in, the people they're with, and the entertainment that they watch or do. So it might start off innocently as watching videos of people being embarrassed or made fun of. Going to videos of seeing people that you disagree with being owned or destroyed. Watching your enemies suffer. We see this with politics today, where people see the people they disagree with, their political opponents, hurt. They feel great. Is that evil? Isn't it? So this is a problem that we see more and more these days, when you have someone who is other than you, your opponent, your enemy. It's easier and easier to take pleasure in their suffering. And we could look at and say, okay, what is the maximum amount of evil? So that would be, the maximum evil would be causing the highest amount of suffering to the least deserving person while having the highest amount of pleasure in doing it. And then you could, even if you want to add, and doing it in the most public way so that it could spread out. That is evil. Now, maybe you can think of examples of this. Hurting people, the least deserving people, for pleasure. Yeah, that is evil. So why am I talking about this? Why is this important to know? Well, I think for religious people, talking about evil is something they would say, of course. Everything I'm saying about how bad it is. But I think that people who do spiritual work often overlook evil and discount it, or just focus on suffering. And so, maybe evil is just a form of ignorance, of not knowing. Something like that. But people who want to get rid of suffering, they say, okay, we want to have more compassion. Well, we see here, evil is the opposite of compassion. It's not the opposite of suffering. So if you're truly interested in compassion, then getting rid of suffering is the most important thing. So noticing suffering, or noticing evil wherever it is. Noticing evil within yourself. Because that's one thing with evil. Is it has that power to spread and to seep into everything. And it seems seeing my enemy hurt or suffer, that sounds like a good thing, right? So what we can see then is where suffering has the possibility of bringing us together. Evil always separates us, and it always spreads out, it multiplies and causes more and more negativity. So I'd like to know what you think. So like always, if you can, just have any comments or you have any questions, please write them in the comment section below. Until next time.